Hello, how are we going? I am live. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for tuning in to our second Inside Parliament live session where I kind of unpack what happened in the last 2 weeks. We had a 2-week session this time around, 2 weeks in Parliament, and just give you a bit more insight rather than sort of the headlines and stuff that you usually get or the social media posts. Feel free to use the chat function. Obviously, don't put anything ridiculous in there that would be offensive to anyone or anything like that. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I've got some staff who are helping me monitor this. Be respectful. We've had some questions that have been pre-submitted, so I'll get to those, but also I'll keep an eye on some of the chat as well, so feel free to use that. This is a public live stream, so your chat will be visible to everyone. This is just a little thing we're trialing this term. This one's the second time. So I'd like to start obviously with an acknowledgement of country. I'm coming to you from North Ryde, right in the heart of Bennelong now, which is in Wallamadigal country. And we've got people from Canberra as well, in Lane Cove, Hunters Hill, and some of those areas over there to our east. So part of Lane Cove and Willoughby Council areas are Canberra country. So we had grand plans to be able to get the software to patch people in and put some more engaging things on this stream, but a bit ambitious to get done in a few weeks' time. We're still working on that. So we hope to have up and running by our next stream or the stream after, just the ability to bring in experts to talk about some of the bills, some ministers, if we can get into their diary, but also put some snippets up of some speeches and some nice elements of the sitting period preceding it. So we're still working on that. Unfortunately, tonight, you've just got me. So sorry about that. And each time we'll look at sort of different things that have happened. Obviously, a sitting week is huge. There are, sometimes 10, 15 new bits of legislation introduced. You've got the Senate bouncing stuff around. Obviously, I don't want to keep you too long. And so we'll just pick a couple of issues guided by some of the questions that we've been sent through, but also stuff that I think is important to Bennelong in particular. And also some of the stuff that I'm doing. I'm your local representative. It's important, sort of what I'm doing in Canberra. So we'll pick out a couple of those as well. So first question we got what are your key priorities in the next 6 months? And so I was just taking down some notes on this, and there's a lot going on. So the first thing that I need to do as part of my job, apart from the day-to-day job in the office, helping people with constituent inquiries, in which there's a lot of those. We're really swamped with those, which is a good thing that we're able to help people, but just a bit slow in getting some responses there. But so sorry about that if anyone's written to me and it's been a little while, but it's there's a lot of work there. So I do that every day, which is important. But a real focus is just, particularly in the next 6 months, is just ensuring that the election commitments that we took to the election specific to Bennelong, that they're sort of on track for delivery in this term. And that means like funding agreements with councils from the Commonwealth to councils. So they sort of need to be sent to the councils and signed and agreed to. So I just sort of keep an eye on those, because sometimes they can be forgotten, or they might take too long, or there might be issues that need to be sorted out. So we've got $1.9 million going to the City of Ryde for futsal courts at Chrissy Park, which is a great investment for active sport and recreation in our area. So the department will send the City of Ryde a deed, and there'll be a bit of back and forth with the legal team. So just to keep an eye on that, we've got $2 million going to the City of Ryde for upgrades to Eastwood Chinatown and establishing an Eastwood Chinatown. If you know of Eastwood Koreatown, on the eastern side of Rose Street. This will be on the western side as Eastwood Chinatown. So that's really exciting. And they've already been reached out to by the relevant department. So that sort of negotiation's underway. There's about $800,000 going to Hunters Hill Council for electricity, solar and battery upgrades and lighting upgrades at Baronia Park, which is awesome. So the new facility there will soon be powered by renewable energy, and have a battery to store it, which is really great. We've got $1.3 million going to Lane Cove Council for their cultural hub. So a rooftop art space, technology for the arts community over there in Lane Cove, and a whole heap of other things, part of Lane Cove's plan. So getting those there. Sorry, my phone's just ringing. An MP's ringing me. That's interesting. I'll call you back. We've got the UCC, Urgent Care Clinic, in Chatswood. So that will hopefully be delivered shortly. I reached out to the PHN, Public Health Network, who administer the EOI documents and the tenders. They're hopeful to get something open next year, which will be great. Similarly, with the Medicare Mental Health Centre, which is a fully bulk billed mental health centre, that'll open in Ryde. They're working on getting that open again as soon as possible and finding a location for that as well. I've also got to find a new office. My office, which is still empty because of a fire, it's another story, and I think we'll get back there soon. But my office is in Epping, and Epping's no longer in Bennelong, so that'll be a big priority. Just to get an outcome there. An MP needs an office in their electorate so that people can come and see me. So that's really important we get that up. We'll be hosting a few events locally, including, you'll see a lot of promotion about this, and hopefully something our community is really excited about. We're going to do the second version of our Electrify event in Bennelong. That'll be in November. I think we've got it penciled in for the 23rd of November. So just locking in a venue, but that'll be a sort of drop-in all-day event. We'll have some electric cars out the front. We'll try and find a venue where we can do test drives. You just want to take it around the block. We'll have a lot of information about the the batteries for home subsidy that we've got that takes 30% off the installation of batteries. And there's some really exciting stats coming out about that. 50,000 batteries have been installed across Australia since July 1, totally blowing out expectations of how much storage will be delivered for the grid. Like, just the numbers are insane. So we'll give out some information on that. We'll try and get some providers for strata, so people who specialize in providing solar and battery storage for strata buildings. So keep an eye out for that. We've got a Christmas event that's coming up by the end of the year as well. Internally, I'm personally working really hard on a couple of things to make sure that our emissions reductions targets are achievable and ambitious, both of them, not just one or the other, but achievable and ambitious. We've got environmental law reforms. So I want to make sure that the Labor version of those bills and that decision on emissions reduction targets is as good as it can be. Then there's still work to do on the credit card surcharge stuff. We're about halfway through the RBA's final review. We need to wait to see what their final recommendation is, and then as a government decide whether we accept that recommendation, go further or whatever. So there's still a long way to go on that. And then, of course, there's my role on committees. I'm chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, and I'll go into that shortly. On house economics, we've got public hearings with the RBA and the big four banks by the end of the year. So they're pretty big. And then on the Standing Committee, Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, we need to review every national security legislation. So that'll be a bit of work there. In and amongst all that, I need to be around, right? Like, I've always tried to do this in my career as an elected official, be accessible, be around. I'll be doing mobile offices. I'll be doing all of that. And in amongst all of that, I'll, try and be a parent, try and be a good partner, and try and chill out with my mates from time to time. So that's my next 6 months, and looking forward to the break in January. So first bit of legislation that I'll probably highlight is our legislation to make home deposits 5% for all first home buyers Now, we've got a strategy on housing. It's a $43 billion plan, and there are 3 pillars. So we'll just break this down into the 3 pillars. We wanted to make it easier to buy a home. We want to make it better to rent a home. And we want more homes to be built. And as a federal government, we're doing that in a number of ways. This legislation fits into that first pillar to make it easier to buy a home. So previously this was sort of means tested, but now it's available to everyone. That's a first home buyer, and it's capped out at a dollar figure, which is all available online. I don't have those figures handy. But from the 1st of October 2025, every first home buyer will only need a 5% deposit to purchase their first home, which means years less time saving, and otherwise what would be 20%. That would mean no mortgage insurance. That'll be underwritten by the government. It's essentially, it means also that parents won't have to provide that service to their kids where they have the means to. Basically, it's just a quicker pathway into owning your own home. Importantly, this is happening at the same time as we're building more homes. So for those who have criticisms of this based on the demand side, we are also addressing the supply side, and it'll help young families and single parents because we've made single parents also eligible for our easier to buy a home schemes. It'll just sort of cut the requirement for people before they own their first home. So that's a really important measure. When I first bought my place way back when, a townhouse in Marsfield, credit things were a whole heap different, and I think I bought my first home with a 2.5% deposit. This was before the GFC and stuff. So things have changed since then, and we believe as a government we need to help people. We still need to have that aspiration for people to buy their first home. So we've expanded the first home buyers 5% deposit, and that'll make things much more easier for people to buy their home. Second thing I'd like to go into in a bit more detail is the review into the 2025 election. So I would have told you last time, you might have seen on my social media that I've been made chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, and the first thing that committee does at the start of a new parliament is review the election that's just gone by. It reviews how the election was run, it identifies problems, and makes recommendation to make our democracy better. So the terms of reference have been, it also looks at big picture stuff as well. So the terms of reference have been released, and specifically what we saw at the 2025 election, you'll see referred to in those terms of reference. So we'll be looking at some of the conduct that we all saw at polling places. Obviously, if you voted in Bennelong, you would have seen an increased presence of third-party volunteers in particular, who, I mean, in my experience, I saw it. I was on polling booths for 2 weeks. Left voters really aggrieved as they were walking in and out of the polling booth. I distinctly remember having a discussion with someone who was neurodivergent, who just described the experience of walking in past this gauntlet of loud volunteers, then walking back out, just saying, I don't never want to do that again. That was awful. And our democracy is great because we have very high participation rates. And what we don't want to do is create an environment at the polling booth or during an election where people are discouraged from voting. And I know the experience in Bennelong was that there was enough behaviour and intimidation on the booths that was a problem. And even in subsequent emails I've received, even before this inquiries was launched, people agree with that. So we'll look into that. We'll look into the safety and security of voters, volunteers, and AEC officials. So getting evidence from them will be really important. We're looking at foreign and domestic interference in elections, whether or not authorization frameworks and the rules that are in place are fit for purpose in 2025 and beyond. particularly with increased electronic advertisements, whether those authorization rules work. Also look at the capacity of the AEC to enforce the rules they already have. Were there examples of breach rules that just weren't addressed? So these are really important things we do. But then we'll also look at big picture stuff. We've been asked to look at whether or not fixed terms are something that we should consider. Whether longer terms of 3 to 4 years, what are the barriers to that? Is there appetite for fixed and longer terms? Is there appetite for an increased parliament? I mean, some of the stats are pretty extraordinary. Last time the parliament was increased, I think each electorate had around, just off the top of my head, 90,000 electors in it. We're now approaching 140, 150,000, 177,000 people living in an electorate, not electors, but that's people. That's the average amount. Some electorates have over 200,000 people living in it. So do we need to increase the size of the parliament? Will the community accept that? There is a cost to that, but also, are you getting the service you expect from your MPs? And is that a structural issue or is that a performance issue? So we'll be looking at that, which will be really interesting. The inquiry is guided by evidence. So I'd really encourage you, if you had an experience that you feel we should know about, I'd really encourage you to write a submission. I think if I might put it in the chat if I have the capacity to do it. Oh no, there it is. I have it open on another screen. So I will copy that, and I think I can put it in the chat. I've never done this before. Right, there we go. Yep, it's in. So if you want to write a submission, and if you want to send some of your thoughts, please look at that link in the chat. Submissions are open. We'll be traveling as well interstate. So if you're listening to this from Victoria or Queensland, we'll be there before the end of the year. We'll be in New South Wales mid-November. And we really need to get that evidence, get what you've experienced so that we can make the reforms that we need, particularly in regards to your voting experience on the day. I had a lot of people raise that as an issue that they want to see fixed, the amount of signage, the amount of volunteers. It's about making sure our democracy is safe, fair, and trusted. The last thing we want is the Americanization of our democracy. And so these inquiries are a really important part of that. Next bit of legislation, cheaper medicines. So we've just passed the National Health Amendment Cheaper Medicines Bill 2025. And that does a couple of things. More medicines on the PBS, including new listings for psoriasis and asthma treatments. It's all part of our commitment way back from 2022, just to make medicines cheaper and healthcare in general more affordable. I mean, I've spoken about the urgent care clinic we're going to open in Chatswood. There's one now open in Ryde. $8.5 billion we've invested for making it easier to see a GP. So 90% of GPs we anticipate will be bulk billed by 2030. But then also making medicines cheaper to buy is an important part of that. We reduced that from around $41 down to $30 in our first term. And now we'll reduce it again from the 1st of January or the 1st of November, shortly, down to $25. If we'd done nothing, that's the same price it was in 2004. If we've done nothing, medicines would be around $50 now. And so we'll make sure they come down. Australians have already saved over $1 billion on prescriptions since we've started this program of making medicines cheaper. And it's about our broader efforts to make healthcare more affordable, which is something I know a lot of people around here care about. Just in Bennelong, that $1 billion figure I gave you, just for Bennelong, it's $8.6 million saved, and that's money directly into people's pockets. You talk to a pharmacist and they say, look, sometimes people come and say, look, I can't afford my medicine this week, I'll just buy my kids, or, you know, which, if I got 2 or 3 scripts, they're like, which one can I not have this week? And I don't think that's a value that that's a health system that we want here in Australia. I think the election made that very clear. We want people to be able to afford their medicines if they need them. We want to protect the PBS, the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, so that these important drugs are there for people to access it if they need to. So it's lower out-of-pocket costs, more affordable access to life-saving treatments, and part of our bigger focus on easing healthcare costs. This one's here out there for all the Treasury nerds and experts out there. There's these things called Treasury Laws Amendment Bills, TLABs we call them, and they're often the delivery vehicle for all government programs. That's something else that was introduced in this sitting. We get like 5 or 10 a year, and they've got like 5, 6 schedules each. They're not usually connected, but they're all about the mechanisms for updating laws, tax treatments, definitions. So for example, our proposed superannuation changes would be in a TLAB as one of the schedules. When we legislated a bonus tax deductibility for small businesses investing in renewable energy, that was in a TLAB. So this TLAB that's just gone through has 7 schedules, but I'll touch on 3. One of them is a schedule in the bill that allows the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, the ACNC, to disclose information about new or ongoing investigations, which is really important. They can't talk about it now, so people don't know if they're investigating anything. So it's just about transparency and boosting public trust and confidence in the sector. So that's a really important change and reform. Schedule 6 of the bill extends the prohibiting energy market misconduct provisions until 2031. This allows the ACCC to investigate and address misconduct by electricity retailers and generators in electricity markets and protecting consumers. So that's a really important extension. And Schedule 7 of the bill delivers the $20,000 instant asset write-off extension by another 12 months, enabling small businesses to invest in their business and invest in plant and equipment up to $20,000 and get that instant tax deduction rather than over a period of time under a normal register of deductions. So all really positive things, but never really gets reported about unless it's something major. So I love these because there's always something you can talk about in Parliament. There's always a deliverable, and there's a few there. Few questions we received on the economic roundtable, and a question here: when can we expect to see serious proposals about reforming the tax system to make it fairer? I don't know who submitted that, but thank you. I'll just touch on the roundtable. This happened prior to the Parliament sitting, and you know, was in the news. It was held in Canberra from the 19th to the 21st of August, and it had leaders from business, unions, and policy. So I think the RBA governor was there, head of Treasury was there, but then also select members of the business and trade union movement communities. And it covered a whole heap of things, but 3 themes emerged from the 3-day summit. And that was a fair go on tax for workers, tax reform to increase business investment, simplification of the tax system, all sort of surrounded about the Treasurer's 3 priorities. That's cutting red tape and streamlining approvals, boosting competition and productivity, and advancing tax reform. So with those 3 key themes, fair go on tax for workers, tax reform to increase investment, and simplifying the tax system, over the next 6 to 12 months, what I'll do locally is I'll host some forums for community members and small businesses to participate in, so that we can go to Treasury, well, not to Treasury, to the Treasurer, with some of the examples from Bennelong. So we've got a huge business community here. As you would know, in Macquarie Park and Lane Cove West, in Macquarie Park and Lane Cove West, where Macquarie Park's the 8th largest economy in Australia, the second largest CBD in New South Wales. So we'll be hosting engagement with them. Huge small business community, lots of sole traders, lots of small businesses. I'd love to chat to you all about simplifying the tax system, particularly for small businesses, getting some concrete examples to the Small Business Minister and the Treasurer on that. And just real broadly, I'll reach out to citizens in Bennelong in regards to more tax reform. And I know a lot of you have many opinions on that. Just a reminder to use the chat, folks. If you have anything you want to say, don't hesitate. If you have any questions, don't be shy, get in there. So the question, when can we expect to see serious proposals about reforming the tax system? So the Treasurer made it clear that the ideas that were discussed in the productivity roundtable were to inform the next 3 budgets and beyond. So some things we'll do in this term. Some we might take to an election. We might have to take to election depending on the content of it. And those calls are usually made by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, obviously with input from the caucus. What I am planning to do is hold those forums locally and give input to the Treasurer in regards to, I think, what Bennelong would like to see in terms of reform over the short and medium term. I'm also a voting member on Labor's Internal Economics and Productivity Committee. So that's the committee that sees the legislation before it goes and debates it before it goes to caucus. So that's an important part of the process. So I'll have some oversight there and be able to contribute there. But I will say this in regards to tax. There was some pretty serious reform in the last term. We, of course, changed Scott Morrison's tax cuts and made them fairer for Middle Australia, making sure everybody got a tax cut, not just the top end. We've also legislated another tax cut next year and another tax cut the year after that, again, for every taxpayer. This really goes to what the Treasurer has said many times, and something you would expect of a Labor government, is ensuring that we need to do more on the income tax burden. Workers are paying too much tax as a proportion of our total tax intake, and we need to find alternatives to that so that young people in particular aren't disadvantaged by the current tax system and current concessions that we've got in place. Few questions on the mining industry paying more tax. We did increase the petroleum rent resource tax, PRRT, by $2 billion, which was an increase to taxes in the mining sector, which hasn't happened for a while. My read of people in Bennelong is they'd like us to go further on that. I'll crystallise those views a bit more through our roundtables and present those to the Treasurer for consideration, I'd imagine. We did huge tax reform on build-to-rent properties to encourage more private sector investment into housing, and we're seeing that bear fruit in Bennelong in particular. 1,000 build-to-rent homes are currently under construction or in planning. We increased the luxury car tax threshold for low emissions vehicles, and we exempted EVs under the luxury car tax threshold from fringe benefits tax to encourage uptake. That was a big tax reform. We cut student debt, totally rewrote how HECS is calculated and charged. One that made a big splash, but I don't think people are aware of, starting next year, huge reform, a $1,000 instant tax deduction when individuals are doing their tax return. So 5.7 million taxpayers currently claim less than $1,000 in their tax return. That's 39% of taxpayers. So in financial year 2026-27, in about 6 clicks, if you have $1,000 or less in deductions, you can just claim that $1,000 in deductions. If you've got more than $1,000 in deductions, you'll just go through your normal tax return process. But if you've got fairly simple tax affairs and you're one of the 5.7 million taxpayers who has deductions less than $1,000, you'll automatically be able to claim $1,000. Average amount of annual tax release for those who benefit is about an extra $205. Australians earning between 45K and 135K could get a benefit up to $320. That's a huge reform, and one that'll touch on a lot of taxpayers starting next year. That was legislated last time. We've also legislated a minimum tax rate of 15% on multinationals to stop tax avoidance and shifting profits elsewhere. So where a multinational has an effective tax rate of less than 15%, the ATO will have the ability to charge a top-up tax to get them to that 15%. That's part of a global movement to stop this sort of tax avoidance that some multinationals are doing. In Parliament, what I spoke on this fortnight, a couple of things, and I'll get to some of the questions in a sec. Oh, here we go. Matthew Barlow. I'm interested in your ideas or suggestions for increased and better quality civics education for young people, especially for those in a disadvantaged background. Matthew, thanks for your comment, Matthew. Yeah, this is something definitely that I expect the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters to consider, not only at the 2025 election inquiry, but perhaps a standalone inquiry. I know the Speaker of the House has taken a huge role in expanding his civics education program across the country. And I know in particular in diverse communities where English is not often their first language, we have really high informal rates. So I'd really like to unpack that to understand what works in civics education out there, what doesn't work. But I know what MPs like me do. So I do this, and I think Sally's here too, the member for Reid. I got the idea of her actually. She does a mock parliament during the school holidays, and I think we will be doing that in the second week of school holidays. I don't have the exact date, but it's where we can get kids, year 4 to 6, and just sort of explain the electoral system. We have a bit of a fun debate about Parliament, we have a fake debate on should pineapple be on pizza. It's a fun afternoon. It's in the school holidays, so parents, you can check out for 2 hours whilst you have to stay there and look after your kids, but you can hop on your laptop while I entertain your children, hopefully for like 90 minutes, maybe not. Yeah, it's a fun program that we do, particularly for those kids who can't make it to Canberra on those year 6 excursions, or if you've got anyone interested or you want someone to learn about civics if they're prior to year 6. But there's a lot to do. The last term of Parliament did an inquiry into this, and unfortunately I think the report or the inquiry was truncated a bit by the election. So following the 2025 election inquiry, I'm going to engage pretty heavily with the Speaker of the House, get some information off him and understand what recommendations we can make. But, I think going to the crux of your question, an understanding of our electoral process is a really important part of our democracy. And where we have compulsory voting, I think we should be doing as much as we can to ensure people understand our electoral process, particularly for those who have recently immigrated here, or for those from a different cultural background, where our election system is different. It's quite unique having compulsory voting across the world. Not many countries have it. Also got one of the oldest democracies in the world. It's the envy of the world as well, what we have here. So we just need to always be at it, always trying to make it better. And civics education is a really important part. I know a lot of community groups run workshops prior to an election on how to cast a valid vote, what the process is. It'd be great to have those type of things ongoing rather than just in the final 2 months before an election. But I'm really interested in understanding what's been working and what hasn't been, to try and increase participation, increase understanding, and particularly in some of those seats that have a high informal rate, increase the formality of votes out there. So what I spoke on this fortnight, pop on my YouTube. You'll see most of my speeches up there, and they'll be up there soon. This past fortnight, we saw the Australian government announce $5.9 million to establish the Richard Scolyer Chair in Brain Cancer Research at Chris O'Brien Lifehouse. A huge shout out to Richard Scolyer, to Chris O'Brien Lifehouse, but also to Hunters Hill Rotary President Barbara Enright, who hosted this fundraiser in like April, and I attended because my partner Jo, she lost her dad to cancer. We had a friend, Kerry O'Brien, who was organising the event with Barbara Enright at Hunters Hill Rotary. It was in the middle of the election, and we just thought, look, we just want to go and support this cause because there isn't enough money for brain cancer research. At short notice, Professor Richard Scolyer spoke at that event. He's a very good advocate. He found out I was at the event and came like beeline straight for me and said, you need to speak to this person, this person, this person. We don't have enough funding for brain cancer research. So then after the election, I then went and saw the professors at Chris O'Brien Lifehouse. They kind of said, this is how it could work. And then made those representations to Health Minister Mark Butler and his team, and full credit to them. They didn't ignore me. They listened, they made contact with the team, they figured out a way to fund it, and it was announced last week. Really important. And Richard came down to what he thought was a meeting because he wanted to contribute meaningfully before it was too late. He's got that relapse of brain cancer, and as if you followed this, he revealed that he doesn't have long left. So he wanted to contribute. He got the invite down to go see the health minister, and they made the announcement while he was there. It was just beautiful. I spoke on the environment. As I said right at the top, it's a huge term for the environment, environmental protection, emissions, energy transmission. Yet the opposition are all over the shop on this. They brought on a debate on the environment, and I gladly reminded them of their record, but also recommitted my efforts to continue to push the government. In the absence of a credible opposition on the environment, they don't even have a position on net zero. It doesn't look like they're anywhere close to getting to one. It's really important that within the Labor caucus, we are that voice to, I know the crossbench elements of the crossbench do a good job here, but there's also a growing number of Labor MPs who are pushing the government to do more there. So I spoke about the environment, spoke about Medicare, and some of the stuff I touched on before. And for those of you who are part of it, we had a deliberative democracy program again just before the election last year. No, the election was this year. Well, just before the election this year, we had a deliberative democracy program with Democracy Co. It was called the Bennelong in One Room Forum, where locals came together around the energy transition to make it fair and equitable. So they presented me with a report, and part of my undertaking was to address that report in Parliament. So I gave a speech on that, which was an important part of me undertaking my obligations, but also part of their transparency. They told us that they want to make renewable energy more accessible, particularly to renters and those who live in strata. They want better public transport solutions. And we've had a number of policies rolled out in that space, which I went into detail in the speech. Again, pop onto my YouTube to see that speech as well. So I've got a question from Beck OS. She said, hi Jerome, do you understand that for a single income household on a median salary, it's mathematically impossible to buy a home without having a good quality of life? What are you going to do about it? Beck, totally understand this. And it's a real driver of a significant number of our policies when it comes to cost of living. And I spoke about healthcare. A lot of our bills in driving down the cost of healthcare are about people on a single income household, on a median salary, on a modest income, on a middle income. It's about making your budget go further. So cheaper medicines, cheaper to see a doctor are a huge part in our cost of living relief. Our changes to the tax system, the changing stage 3 tax cuts, increasing the take-home pay of middle-income earners, and making sure that everyone got a tax cut was a huge part. What you're going through is a huge part of why we wanted to make those changes to make it fairer. The productivity roundtable, Jim Chalmers said, working people, young, particularly the young, have too much of the tax burden on their shoulders. We need to change that. All our housing policies are aimed at making housing more affordable. We've had this housing crisis around now is 40 years in the making. And as a federal government, we're leaning in as hard as we can, the biggest, so $43 billion worth of investment, but we know there's more to do. And there's no silver bullet. We've got the state government that needs to do stuff, local government that needs to do stuff, and the federal government that needs to lead that. Housing affordability is, this is a global issue, but it's number one, I think, for us here in New South Wales and in Sydney in particular, and the Premier is doing a lot of heavy lifting from the state level, and at the federal government we're doing the same. Huge investments in social and affordable housing. I think the Housing Australia Future Fund's aiming to deliver 55,000 new social and affordable homes, because without a safe and affordable place to live, there's no space to be innovative and entrepreneurial and for our, what we need for our economy to grow and for people to be able to afford a home. So we just got to get the basics right here. And we've got significant funds and policies in place to do that, to ensure that people on a median income are able to unlock opportunity and prosperity. So yeah, last question from Matthew. Hear more about the new social media age restrictions for people. It's coming. I think there was a 100-day countdown recently. Age verification seems to be progressing well. This is really just about setting the social expectations about social media. Just as there are age restrictions on buying alcohol, we believe that, and that sort of sets standards. I mean, obviously people under 18 still get their hands on, sorry, I just saw a comment come up, which I'll address as I close. It's about sort of setting societal norms around social media, just as there are around alcohol and tobacco. Obviously people break those rules, and, no system is perfect, but it's about giving parents a bit more authority and control when it comes to social media for those under 16. Some already do it, which is great, but this law will change and sort of reset the conversation. It'll come into force in less than 100 days. I think it's about December. I've already given my kids warning. They're not on any social media, but they do have access to YouTube. So I've said, 70 days left or whatever it is, and then we'll be getting them off. And yeah, I think it'll be a good change. I think it'll be a change for the better. Final question. When are you going to 1v1 Nick McKim in Fortnite and put the greens back in their place? I'm going to have to get my son to train me up on Fortnite. So I play Tony Hawk with him, my son. I play FIFA with my son and Rocket League. But I got to do some practice on Fortnite before I take on Nick McKim. I still don't do the gritty on election night. I'm just not at that level. So apologies, whoever asked that. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully that was informative. Probably not entertaining, but informative. I just saw another comment, which I won't repeat. So we'll hopefully have a bit more interaction next time. We're working on that, as I said. Thanks for joining in. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. We'll eventually get to do it. And apologies again. There's a lot of emails there. We're trying our best. And stay in touch. See ya.